I am in the middle of a divorce. My husband is being incredible though. Everything is good. It is a very civil divorce.
Jennifer Sheffield shared this final heartbreaking TikTok video just days before both she and her estranged husband Brandon were found dead inside of their Mississippi home. We're going to break down what we know so far about the tragic events that followed. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Hey, so before we jump into this story, I have a really exciting announcement for you guys. The video version of Sidebar is now available on Spotify. That's right, we are so thankful for your guys' support of Sidebar. Us getting this show on Spotify video is truly due to how loyal this audience is, so thank you so much for that. And yes, you can now watch and listen on the go, from Diddy to the United Healthcare murder updates to crazy court moments. It is all on Spotify. So right now, you can scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to follow Sidebar on Spotify. It started out with what seemed to be a hopeful new chapter for Jennifer Sheffield. The 30-year-old mother who often documented her life on TikTok shared this candid video to her page on December 10th, a post where she shared that she was moving on from her marriage to her husband, 40-year-old Brandon Sheffield.
I'm about to be a newly single mom, and I am in the middle of a divorce. My husband is being incredible though. Like, really and truly, like, we're working together. Everything's great. We're splitting everything down the middle. Like, you know, everything is good. It is a very civil divorce with our daughter in mind, and I really appreciate that.
So yeah, that video kind of gave us a glimpse into her mindset as she was preparing to transition into life as a single mother. And despite the separation, you can kind of hear her emphasize that she and her then estranged husband Brandon were ready to move on, put their daughter first, that things would work out. And again, note how she describes Brandon as being, quote, incredible throughout the process. And Jennifer goes on to acknowledge the challenges that she will face, or that she's planning on facing ahead, because it's not going to be easy. But nonetheless, she appeared to remain hopeful.
You know, I'm going to be a mom, single income right now, and he will be helping with her. He will be supporting her, you know. So essentially, like, I'm really thankful for that, and that I will not have to worry so much about supporting her. However, I will be on a very limited income, with buying a new house and, you know, paying a mortgage and all that stuff.
And as she wrapped up that video, Jennifer shared her vulnerability with her followers, admitting that she was a little scared, but still, again, hopeful.
I've never done this before. I've never been on my own before. So if you have any tips, saving money, making money, anything like that, like, I would really appreciate it. Like, you know, coffee at home, you know, I take caffeine pills, I do my own hair, nails, everything. Like, I do all that. So yeah, if you just have any tips, like, I would really appreciate it, because, like, I'm a little scared right now.
But what makes this so sad and what makes this so chilling is that this would be the last time she would ever share an update on social media. On December 28th, police in Brandon, Mississippi receive a call. And they receive a call from concerned family members about this possible foul play at the Sheffield home. This is per reporting from multiple local outlets. When authorities arrived at around 7:19 a.m., they would discover just a devastating scene. Both Jennifer and Brandon were dead from apparent gunshot wounds. But this is where it gets even more tragic. The Brandon Police Department told local news that Brandon Sheffield appeared to have been the one who shot Jennifer before turning the gun on himself. The man that she originally praised for his support through their divorce was now the person allegedly responsible for taking her life. And back to their child, by the way, according to People, the couple's daughter was home at the time of this incident, though there's not a lot of information on her status at this point. But according to her obituary, Jennifer had 2 daughters, by the way. Now, the investigation is ongoing because local authorities are trying to piece together exactly what happened here, particularly since there is a lot of confusion surrounding Brandon's purported actions. That's what makes this tragedy even harder to comprehend. You heard the TikTok video from Jennifer. According to Brandon's obituary, he was even described as a devoted father who enjoyed spending countless moments with his family. Those who knew the couple are struggling to understand how things could have escalated so violently and so quickly from what seemed like what was truly an amicable separation. Jennifer's friend, Faye Lott, said in a statement to WLBT regarding Brandon, "He's never been a violent person that I was ever aware of. I was with her when they met, and I've always loved him for how he loved her, so it's definitely hard trying to understand something we will never be able to." According to Jennifer's obituary, she was working towards a career in healthcare after obtaining a Master of Science degree in biology, medical science, and a Bachelor of Science degree in biochemistry. She documented her studies on her TikTok and videos like this one.
Hi, and welcome to my chaotic life. So here I'm just studying a little bit before work at one of the coffee shops like right down the street. When I tell you I just kind of fit in studying anywhere I can, that's pretty much how it's been lately. This week we have a lot going on with my daughter's school ending. So she's got her band banquet. We got to go get a dress. I've got the yard to cut. I've got some gardening to do. I have like my max hours that I can do at work. And I'm just kind of trying to do what I can here.
But I will say, in some of her videos, she expressed her struggles. And that was an element of vulnerability that she shared. And there was this one haunting video, it was a little over a month before her death, where she seemed to be asking for some kind of help.
I have been hearing from God. Now that I'm feeling God's presence, it's like, bam, out of nowhere, just something happens. The devil is after me because I'm walking with God. I'm doing the best I can. And then, right? Like, please help. I know TikTok has all the answers to literally everything. So just words of encouragement, please.
While we may never know what she was specifically referring to in that video, we do know that by all accounts, Jennifer didn't seem to anticipate her life and the life of her estranged husband to take such a tragic and irreversible turn. And that's what we want to talk about. I want to bring in crime victims' rights attorney Elizabeth Parker to talk more about this. Elizabeth, thanks so much for coming here on Sidebar. With a case like this, it's so disturbing. What do you think could have triggered Brandon or someone in Brandon's position to do something like this?
You know, what's interesting is the timing of when this occurred. December 28th. So that's right, 3 days after Christmas. And oftentimes the holidays can be a very triggering event. You know, the thought had to have gone through Brandon's mind that this is the last holiday that he would spend married to Jennifer, the last holiday that he would be together as a family with his daughter, with Jennifer. And oftentimes the phrase in these types of cases holds true. If I can't have you, no one will. So Brandon here may not have been able to envision a future without his child, without the children, without Jennifer. Spending the holidays with him. And we see this so often around the holidays, just such a tragedy. And it's just, we can see this time and time again, that the holidays definitely are a triggering event in these domestic violence, murder, suicide cases.
You're 100% right, 100% right. We see that a lot of times, unfortunately. Truth is, though, we're speculating because we just don't know what happened here. And that's the question, right? The answers. Because in cases like this, where the circumstances are not clear, right? How does law enforcement piece it together? How do they typically handle an investigation, a domestic violence investigation like this into a possible murder-suicide?
Well, this type of investigation where, as you said, the circumstances are unclear at this time, law enforcement investigators are going to carefully examine all of the physical evidence at the crime scene to determine if this is an instance of foul play where another third party, broke into the home and was the perpetrator, or if this was in fact a murder-suicide at the hands of Brandon. They will analyze the gunshot wounds. They will look at the trajectory of the bullets and how they traveled. They will look for gunshot residue on both parties' hands. They'll look at the physical evidence in the home. Was there a struggle? Was there a suicide note? Were there voicemail messages? Were there text messages? Were there threatening emails? Anything like that that could support the domestic violence, that could support threats, that could support that this was imminent, and that, Brandon had made these threats and confirmed that this was something that he would do. And then the medical examiner will closely examine the bodies. They'll look for forensic evidence, they'll look for DNA, signs of a struggle, any signs of physical trauma beyond the gunshot wounds. So the physical evidence there will tell the story. And then, depending on what the child that was present in the home knew, they can get some clues, they can get some indicators of how the family lived their lives and maybe what really happened that day.
How confident are you, or how hopeful are you that there will be text messages, emails, social media posts, journal entries, letters indicating state of mind? We talk about state of mind with her videos, but in terms of Brandon, is there times that it literally comes out of nowhere? There's nothing to indicate. We always cover cases where people commit crimes. You say, it's shocking. It came out of nowhere. This is not the person that I knew. And you don't have that documentary evidence. But in a domestic violence situation like this, or allegedly a domestic violence situation like this, are you hopeful that there'll be some sort of written evidence to give us some answers here?
I think it's very rare in a domestic violence situation, if that is what in fact occurred here, that there would be no documentary evidence, no evidence to support domestic violence in the home. For a person to just snap and kill their wife, kill their loved one, and then kill themselves, that's very rare. There had to have been some sort of threat, some sort of indication that this was coming. Now, Jennifer may not have shared anything with any family members or any friends, but typically there are signs. Maybe there were signs of injuries. Maybe there were calls to the police that no one knew about, or just disturbances. Again, talking to the children in the home. Did daddy ever fight with mommy? Daddy ever do anything to hurt mommy that you heard or that you saw? When the police dig and they investigate, it's very rare for a situation like this to happen out of nowhere without any warning, without any evidence to support prior domestic violence, prior threats.
Are there any warning signs that law enforcement, family members should watch out for in cases like this?
Even if a divorce is self-described by one of the parties as amicable, there are warning signs. If there's any prior incidents of domestic disturbances, calls to service for law enforcement to the home, friends or families noticing unexplained injuries or excuses for injuries that don't make sense. The children will tell teachers or will tell friends, again, mommy and daddy fight, or daddy hurts mommy. And if children seem withdrawn from one of the parents, that can also be a very big indicator that there is violence in the home.
I want to talk about the children in a minute, but back to the videos from Jennifer. We look at it with 20/20 vision now after what happened, but some of it's chilling. I wonder how much that's going to factor into the investigation. We look at things that are, that signify that they were having a good relationship. They were going to be separating amicably. She talked about some of her struggles. I mentioned kind of that little bit of a haunting video about what she was afraid of. But do any of those videos signal anything to you? Do you think they have any kind of value for investigators?
I think all of it has value to try to piece together what was really going on in Jennifer's state of mind. But the December 10th TikTok video that she posted, Jennifer seemed upbeat. She seemed happy. It didn't feel coerced. It didn't feel forced. I didn't personally see any warning signs in that video that would have indicated to me, and I'm a victims' rights advocate that represents so many victims of domestic violence day in and day out. I didn't see any warning signs that would indicate to me that there should have been a report to law enforcement, or that somebody should have stepped in and intervened and tried to help her. I think all of it, and they could go back quite a ways, is helpful to law enforcement, but I don't think it's going to be the smoking gun, so to speak, or something that is going to really make a decision either way that this was domestic violence. I think it's going to be a combination of all of the pieces of the physical evidence and anything else that they can find.
And to be clear, when someone initiates divorce proceedings or a separation of some kind, there's not an immediate legal protection put forward to, again, physically protect that person, right? It's something they have to petition for and have to have evidence for, right?
No, there's not anything immediately. And unfortunately, domestic violence victims, so often we don't know what goes on behind in people's home behind their closed doors. The police can be called, restraining orders of protection that are sometimes obtained by victims. It's just a piece of paper. And they know that. They know they're not safe by that piece of paper. And the criminal justice process, unfortunately, is so overwhelming. Oftentimes victims don't want to cooperate with the prosecution. And it's very difficult as a family member or friend to intervene in a case where they know a person is a victim of domestic violence unless the victim is willing to get the help themselves and there's strong evidence to support the case. As you're very well aware, prosecutors have huge caseloads. And oftentimes, even when victims do cooperate with a domestic violence case, they don't feel like they've received the justice that they deserve, or they've made their situation worse and they fear retaliation. So even though there are steps out there that victims can take, the system is unfortunately broken and doesn't offer the protections that make the victims feel safe.
Talk about the kids. What are the legal protections or resources available to them to ensure their safety and well-being right now, to ensure maybe, I don't even know who the guardian would be. I imagine it would be the family. Do they receive any kind of compensation or legal support at all? What happens for the kids?
Well, in a case like this where the children have lost both the parents, typically the court system is going to step in and determine who's going to be the guardian and the custodian of the children until they're of legal age. Typically, as you said, it is a family member, but if none exist, it could be a close friend. If there's nobody to step in, they could become part of the foster system, which would be very, very tragic, very sad. In terms of compensation for the girls, this tragedy occurred in Mississippi. And the Crime Victims Compensation Division in Mississippi does provide financial assistance to victims of crimes and their family members. The goal of the Crime Victims Division is to provide a method of compensating and assisting persons who are innocent victims of crime and criminal acts, as these girls are. So they could receive some compensation from the state for mental health counseling, which they obviously are going to need in the future. Funeral expenses and loss of support. But, how much that they will receive is unknown. Everything else will have to go through the probate court. If there are any assets left in the estate of the parents, that would obviously go to the children. They're going to be on their own for the rest of their lives. No parents to guide them and protect them. And it's just devastating. It's such a tragedy.
Yeah. And I also wanted to ask you, if the investigation confirms that this was a murder-suicide, does the surviving family members, do they have a right to sue for, wrongful death or something like that? It's kind of an interesting question as we talk about what might be happening from here.
It is an interesting question, and my initial answer is no, but then I thought there could be a caveat to that. So they would not be able to sue the estate of their father for the murder-suicide unless the father had a will that gave all of his assets away to a third party. That's the only thing I can think about, the only scenario I could think where the children could sue for wrongful death. I can't imagine that happened.
Or Jennifer's family.
Correct. But typically in a situation like this, like I said, the estate of both the deceased parents is going to go into probate, and the court will appoint a personal representative that will ensure the assets are distributed to the children.
And there's no indication at this point, to be clear, that any family member wants to take away money or assets from the children. Why do I say that? Because as authorities are continuing this investigation, there was a GoFundMe page that has apparently been set up to support Jennifer's two daughters in the wake of her death. It was set up reportedly by the children's aunt, and the page reads, "So many have been praying for our family and have reached out wanting to help, and our only goal is to support the girls. There's no handbook on how to navigate such a tragedy, and we're doing our best to figure it out, but we do know Kylie and Gracie will need financial support." And the page, which is aiming to reach $15,000, has already surpassed $9,000 as of this morning. So if anybody is interested, they can support the family there. And let me just end by this. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, then you can contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline by calling the number there on your screen or by visiting thehotline.org. And that number again is 1-800-799-7233. Elizabeth Parker, thank you so much for coming on. A really difficult case, but appreciate you giving your insight and analysis. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jesse, for having me.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.